In general, if a case is in the public eye for long enough, it'll be solved, but that's not always the case, and even some of the most popular true crime cases still remain unsolved. Number 5. Judge Joseph Force Crater disappeared in August of 1930 and has since become known as the most missing man in New York. Like a number of government officials at the time, Crater was known to have had less than a pristine reputation. He was believed to have ties to organized crime, and his appointment to the state Supreme Court was rumored to have been the result of a bribe to the corrupt Tammany Hall political machine. He was also fond of showgirls and had a number of extramarital affairs despite claiming he was devoted to his wife, Stella Wheeler. It was while Stella was out of the country that Crater disappeared. The couple had gone to Maine on vacation while the court was out of session. In July, Crater received a phone call and returned to New York telling his wife that he had to straighten out some people. This didn't take long and he was back within a few days. If he had told his wife about who exactly he'd been sent to straighten out, she never said. However, he didn't stay in Maine for long after returning, and he traveled to New York City again on August 3rd. He assured Stella that he would be back in a few days, but this is the last time she would see him. It's not known what Crater spent the first 3 days of his trip doing in New York, but August 6th was a flurry of action. His law clerk reported that he spent 2 hours in his office removing files and locked briefcases and cashing over $5,000 worth of checks. He then purchased a ticket for a Broadway performance later that night. Shortly before the performance was scheduled to start, he met a friend at a restaurant. According to the friend, William Klein, he was in a good mood and showed no signs of being stressed or anxious about anything. One of Crater's girlfriends, a showgirl named Sally Ritz, was also at the restaurant, though whether this is a coincidence or if Ritz was with Crater that evening is debated. Crater left the restaurant at around 9:15 p.m. after the start of the play he'd bought a ticket to. According to some sources, he was last seen walking down the street, though others claim he hailed a taxi. No taxi company reported picking him up. In a few weeks before Crater was officially reported missing, his wife sent her chauffeur to look for him when he didn't return to their holiday home as scheduled. The chauffeur found no signs of Crater, but reported that the flat where he had been staying was in order. There was nothing missing except the clothes Crater had been wearing the day that he disappeared, and items that he usually cherished were found in his dresser. Since the disappearance, what exactly happened to Crater has been the subject of wild speculation. Some believe the ties to organized crime came back to bite him, while others think Crater staged his own disappearance to be with his girlfriend. Number 4. The disappearance of Claudia Lawrence is one of the most notorious unsolved disappearances in recent British history. Claudia was 35 years old when she vanished on the morning of March 18, 2009. She was a chef at the University of York, and police believed she was on her way to work when something happened that would change her life forever. Claudia was last seen the day before her disappearance. She worked a morning shift at the university, starting at 6 a.m. and finishing around 2:30 p.m. Her car was getting repair work done and had been unavailable for a few weeks, so Claudia was used to walking to and from work. It was roughly a 45-minute journey. That day, however, a friend offered Claudia a lift home and she arrived back at 2:50 p.m. Neighbors saw her leave her home to send a letter not long after she returned home, but she returned a few minutes later after the errand was completed. She spent the rest of the day at home chatting with her friends and parents on the phone. According to everyone who spoke with her, she was cheerful and relaxed. She made agreements with her mother for the upcoming Mother's Day, and when she turned in for the night relatively early, she would have to get up before 5 a.m. for her shift at the university the following morning. Claudia left her house like usual at around 5:15 a.m., taking her backpack, chef's clothes, and mobile phone. A cyclist spotted someone who resembled Claudia on a bridge about halfway along her route. The woman was with a man in a dark hoodie. The couple were seen again 30 minutes later outside of the university, and they appeared to be arguing. Claudia then didn't show up for work. Her manager tried calling her a few times. The first time it didn't answer, and the second time the phone had seemed to have been purposefully switched off. Claudia was always punctual, but her manager didn't think much of her absence, and it wasn't until that evening that anyone realized something was wrong. She had arranged to meet a friend at the local pub that evening, but never showed up. Friends tried to get in contact with her but had no success, and the following day she was reported missing. In the weeks following Claudia's disappearance, there were numerous appeals, with grainy CCTV footage shown to the public. Police suspect that she was a victim of foul play, but there is a possibility that she decided to abandon her life and start again in Cyprus, where she had friends. The investigation expanded to that area but didn't find any success. More than a decade later, there have been numerous arrests in Claudia's disappearance, but so far no answers have been found as to what really happened to her. Number 3. From the outside, Mary Shotwell Little was a happy newlywed looking forward to her life with her husband Roy. But there were small indications that something was bubbling below the surface. It was nothing that caused anybody to be suspicious about her, but indicated something bigger was going on when she vanished in October of 1965. Mary was a secretary at a bank in Atlanta. She married Roy Little, a bank examiner who was training to become an auditor, just 6 weeks prior to her disappearance. It was a happy marriage, but there appeared to be at least one other person that may have wanted to be romantically involved with Mary. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Mary received flowers from a secret admirer. The bouquet came from a local florist, but the person who ordered them was never identified. She also received mysterious phone calls and was overheard telling the callers she was married and no longer wanted to visit them, though they were welcome to visit her. She never discussed the flowers or phone calls with her friends or coworkers, but a few days before she vanished, she did indicate that she had something to tell them. A few friends had also picked up on the fact that Mary didn't like being home alone or driving unaccompanied. It was a new behavior that had started a few weeks after she was married. On October 14th, Roy Little was out of town as part of his training to become an auditor. He would be back the following day, and Mary was planning a party for the event. She went to work as usual that day, shopped for groceries on her way home, then met with a coworker for dinner. She left at around 8 p.m. Mary was reported missing the following day. When she didn't show up for work, her supervisor tried to get in touch with her. The coworker that had dinner with her the night before told him where to find her car. At first, security guards couldn't find the vehicle, but when Mary's supervisor went to look, he found it right where it was supposed to be. Inside the car was a small amount of blood that had been smeared around the car. A few items of Mary's clothing were found in the car as well, but the rest of Mary's clothes, her purse, jewelry, and car keys were never found. Mary's gasoline credit card was used twice on October 15th, 12 hours apart, at gas stations that were only 3 hours apart. The signature on the credit slips was written in Mary's handwriting, and the clerks from the station reported seeing a woman with a small head injury accompanied by 2 men. Number 2. On April 8, 2011, Tara Horahan watched her husband leave the house in Columbia to head to work. He was an electrician, wearing his work uniform with his name, Robert Horahan, attached to it. He had a box of expensive tools and drove her car, which had a vanity plate with her name on it. Tara didn't suspect anything out of the ordinary and continued on her day like normal. However, when she got to work, a coworker told her that they'd seen Robert heading north. The location he'd been spotted at was very out of the way, and Tara couldn't think of a reason why he'd be heading in that direction. When she tried calling him, his phone went straight to voicemail. It was incredibly odd, but possible that there'd been a change of plans at work for whatever reason, and his mobile phone could have died. Tara didn't worry too much, but when Robert didn't return home that night, it was clear that something was wrong. A police investigation discovered Robert hadn't been scheduled to work that day. His employers had no idea where he could be going. He was last seen at 8 a.m. on the day of his disappearance. He was spotted at a grocery store where he'd previously worked and was well known by the people who still worked there. He ate breakfast at the store and then continued on his journey. It was later discovered that Robert had been planning to meet an old acquaintance, Daniel Boyd Fennell, though he never showed up for the meeting. The car Robert had been driving showed up 50 days later after Robert was last seen. It had been parked in a parking lot of a local shopping center and was parked at the edge of the lot, and it's possible it had been there for more than a week before anybody realized it was abandoned. Police found the tools Robert had taken with him inside of the car, indicating that there hadn't been a robbery. There was no sign of Robert's since. He was taking medication for a heart problem, and his wife said that he would have serious side effects if he didn't take it daily. His prescription hasn't been filled since he went missing. Number 1. Carla Valles suffered from a degenerative eye condition that meant she would slowly lose her eyesight. Despite being legally blind, she was determined to see as much of the world as possible before she lost her sight completely. She'd already traveled to Egypt, Yemen, and Indonesia, among other places, and when her friend got married in Peru, she decided to take the opportunity to explore many of Peru's famous places. After attending the wedding, Carla had 2 weeks in Peru in which to explore. Even though she'd visited 20 countries alone, some people weren't as confident in Carla's ability to explore by herself, and on December 11th, she was denied entrance to Machu Picchu due to her poor vision. Fortunately, a group of travelers from Spain and Argentina met Carla and invited her to join their group. They spent the day hiking before returning to the city where they would be staying. Carla joined them for a night out at a club before returning to the hostel where she was staying. By the time the rest of the group woke up the next morning, she'd vanished. Carla's communication with her friends and family while she was on the trip was already sporadic. The day before, her friend sent numerous worried messages to Carla asking for her to get in touch. Carla did that evening, telling her friend her phone signal had been very bad. She followed up the apology with a message saying there was a big issue she needed to resolve. Her final message to her friend came on the evening of December 11th, when she said she couldn't wait to tell her friend all about it, and that it was 100% worth it. What it supposedly was remains a mystery, but given Carla had wanted to visit Peru for such a long time, it's possible she was just talking about Peru. Carla's family became worried after she missed her flight home, and her father flew to Peru to help conduct an investigation into her disappearance. It was discovered Carla had taken a small rucksack of belongings with her and left the hostel and appeared to be heading towards a nearby park. Locals recalled giving her directions to the park, and a park employee said he saw Carla walking towards the entrance. The park's ticket taker couldn't confirm whether or not she had entered. Despite years of extensive searches of the park, Carla has never been found, and police aren't 100% sure she even entered. Her fate remains unknown. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.